April 18th, 1775, Paul Revere rode from Boston to Lexington to warn of the arrival of British soldiers. He started this ride at a small tavern on Union Street. This tavern's name was the Green Dragon. The Green Dragon Tavern was not only the beginning place of Revere's famous ride, but also the birthplace of American freedom. On this podcast, we will explore what it means to be American and how we can all be protectors of the American freedom our founding fathers fought for. Join us in our journey to rediscover what it means to be Americans.
Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Green Dragon Podcast. I am your host, Aiden.
And your fellow host, Tom.
And your fellow host, Jake.
We've got the first full crew back for this year. All of us have made it on. There's no guest this week, so it's actually, this is like back to the beginning of the Green Dragon Podcast. We're like back to the crew.
OGs.
The OGs, yeah, exactly. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing. I think we've got a lot planned, or we're trying to plan a lot for this year. This podcast in particular, I think it's going to follow like how we started out. I think we'll talk a little bit about news, because we haven't talked, like, I feel like in the last podcast we haven't dwelled too much on what's going on in the news, and sometimes that's the best thing, because sometimes the news can be utterly depressing. But there are some things that I think we should touch on, and then we'll get to our main topic for the day, which is what it means to be a man, manhood. I think that's an important thing going into the new year for all those men out there that are trying to be better. So we'll kind of discuss that. I think we're in an era that true men are needed, and we are by no means experts on this topic. But I think it would be good to just share our thoughts, and we can always get an expert on in the future to talk about that. But I did want to start out the podcast with a quote. I ended the last podcast with a quote from Ronald Reagan, so I'm going to begin this one with a quote from Ronald Reagan. And he says, "We've come to a turning point. We have a decision to make. We will continue with yesterday's agenda and yesterday's failures, or we will restart our ideals and our standards. We will reaffirm our faith and renew our purpose." So I think that's a great way to kick off this podcast and kick off this new year, because we still are in January. It's still sort of like the beginning of the year. I think we all have the option to either live by the failures of yesterday, or kind of reset and set our sights on a new goal and become better. And I think that's why we started this podcast, is to kind of reshape the way we think, and help others try to become better and reshape the way they think as well. So with that all being said, I think in the future weeks to come, we may or may not do a series on great presidents, Ronald Reagan being one of them. I think it'd be. I'm reading that book right now that I talked about in the last podcast, Reagan's God and Country. Fantastic book. If you just want, like, you don't even have to read it chapter by chapter. It's just a collection of all his greatest speeches, excerpts from different speeches he gave over his career. I've got it. I'm going to hold it up to the camera here. Oh, let's see. It probably won't show. But it's Reagan's God and Country by Tom Freeling. So if you're interested in that, it's an easy, quick read. I'm almost done with it. My New Year's resolution was to read one book a month. So I think I'll be getting started on my second soon here. But it's been a good, just daily read. I think you could even read it 10 times. And then each time you come away with something different. Half the book is highlighted for me right now, so that's how much I've enjoyed it. So if you're looking for a good book, especially just to study a great orator. I mean, Reagan was a fantastic orator. I mean, he's probably one of the greatest of all time, and especially the modern age. Great leader, not only American leader but world leader. Moral leader, I think. Fantastic human being there. So it's been enlightening. with all that being said, I think we should jump into our news for the week. There's a few things I wanted to touch on. Just to get things off with a bang, I wanted to talk about the hypocrisy of the institution, or the matrix, as we talked a little bit about in the last podcast, that Andrew Tate calls it the matrix. This one's an interesting one. I read this article. It was a New York Times article, but a 10-year-old girl, or a 10-year-old, I think it was a girl. I should have written this down, but it was, I think, a 10-year-old girl and a mother the mother took the 10-year-old to get a tattoo, and now the mother's being arrested for it. Apparently, this is because a 10-year-old isn't old enough to give consent, which I don't know how this fits into the narrative of the woke left, because they apparently think that a 10-year-old can give consent for gender affirming hormones, but a 10-year-old can't give consent for a tattoo. That's completely reversible and removable. Yet the life altering gender hormones, that's something a child can give consent to. So I thought that was crazy. The mother's apparently been arrested and facing charges for that. So, I'm hopeful that gets overturned, because, while it is crazy to take your 10-year-old to go get a tattoo, don't get me wrong, that's probably not something I would choose to do with my 10-year-old. It could have been gender affirming care, which is long term probably more detrimental to a person than a tattoo. I don't know what you guys think. I thought this was just great. It's the hypocrisy of the institution in my eyes. It's like, okay, you're gonna send a mother away to jail and take away her kid because she took her kid to get a tattoo, but you'll let her, go take testosterone and gender and hormone blockers.
Yeah. It's issues like that make me more and more convinced that it's not just stupidity, the gender affirming ideology. It feels a lot more calculated if the officials have the common sense to know that it's an insane idea for a 10-year-old to get a tattoo. Like, how much more should you know than that changing your actual gender, you can even extend that out to vaccines and children that young as well. How outlandish that is. So yeah, no, it really does. It does highlight how calculated of an effort this is to instill gender ideology in the culture.
I think you're totally right. I just saw a really interesting newscast by, I don't know who it was exactly, but a very smart and attractive conservative woman, which you don't see very often on TV, but it was a great thing to see.
Sounds like you got a crush, Tom.
This new thing called transabled. Well, you have to have crushes here and there for sure. But, so
wait, sorry to interrupt you. Can I interrupt you one more time? And you seriously can't remember this lady's name? Are you sure? Or are you just failing to mention it?
Oh, she didn't list her name. It was on Instagram post.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, fair enough.
I thought it was like Tommy Loren, but it wasn't. It was someone else. So anyway, so she was talking about transabled people. I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but now the thing is like feeling like you're disabled. So there's a guy who actually had his leg amputated because he felt like he was a disabled person. And then there was someone who put, I think it was like drain cleaner in their eyes to go blind because they felt like a blind person. And she was like, when does this stop? And she said, and to think that's bad, she said there's a grown man, I'm about to say bad word there, but a grown man who was listed himself on the Craigslist up for adoption because he felt like a kid. She was like, when does this stop? Like, like does a kid able now go buy beer because they say they feel like they're a 21-year-old now? It's like if you let this thing go, there's going to be nothing left to society. I was blown away by that. I was like, holy smokes! Like, what on earth entered these people's minds to want to be disabled or want to be a baby again? Like, I can get being lazy, but wanting to be adopted by somebody, like,
Yeah, but I think it's just like I don't know. It just highlights like the desperate need for individuals to like stand out nowadays. And it's like so they're so mediocre and they're so bad at life that they have to have something that makes them like special. And it's kind of hilarious. Um, Man, I really want to know if this guy that identifies as a child that is up for adoption. I really want to know if this is like actually genuine or if he's just like really a genius and he's trying to get adopted and like like land himself like a sugar mama or something like that. I mean, he could be in this for the long haul, the money. I mean, this could be like a modern day genius here. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if as long as this stuff's going on, I mean, you're gonna get people out there that are probably crazy, but then you're going to have the geniuses, the crazy people, the psychopaths. They're going to take advantage of this and milk it for everything it is. I mean, why not, right? If society's going to accept you to be a 52-year-old that identifies as a 3-year-old, why not? Why not? Why not just roll with it?
Yeah, I think we're already seeing that with one one news story I remember coming out a couple years ago was of this dude in the UK. Um, he I guess felt like supposedly that he was had some Orientalness in him, and this is a white guy, and he decided to get facial reconstructive surgery, plastic surgery to narrow his eyes. So it came out like they call them Korean eyes, and that was like his strategy to get some type of, I forgot exactly what it was, but it was some grant from the government, I think, for his school, for being a minority. So yeah, people are already trying to utilize it to their advantage.
And I think the cool thing about that, what I mean, it is taking advantage of a stupid system, but like it's at the same time it's pointing out the serious like logical flaw in the system that they've created is that anybody could go and do. I mean, like it's just completely poking fun. That they created the system in place to give minorities better grants or student help or scholarships and all these different things, and then you have people that are pretending to be those minorities, and then if you give those people the opportunity to actually like identify as a minority, I mean, what's stopping you? I mean, it's a
Yeah,
complete like you started with it's like when you pull a thread like on your t-shirt and it just starts out as a little bit of like just that little thread, but if you keep pulling that thread, eventually that whole shirt's gonna unravel. And it's kind of the same thing with society right now. Is like we started with like these little things that seem to be meaningless, right? You start pulling at the thread, like oh, it'll probably break. You break off that, and you pull it a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, and before you know it, you're left with nothing but a mess of like yarn or thread. Just what, and that's what society's going to end up if we keep heading down this road because we're just going to keep pulling and pulling and pulling, grasping for something more, trying to make the madness stop, and it's just going to create more madness. I think it's kind of like as sad as it is to see, it's kind of hilarious to watch it at the same time. Like at this point, just grab a bag of popcorn, sit back, find yourself a good drink, and just watch society burn because we're at that point. Enjoy it while it lasts. Enjoy the good entertainment.
yeah, that's really interesting. I think one of the things that is causing a lot of this stuff is the fear of confronting pain. I think that might be a big driver with a lot of these crazy problems people are having, because if they can eliminate all their pain with it's almost like a drug, almost like these woke ideals. If people can just say, you know what, I'm gonna do this, and the society has to accept me, and there's no drawbacks or consequences now, then essentially they're trying to rid themselves of responsibility and focus their energy on something stupid instead of actually fixing this big problem in their life, because it's probably something big. It probably grew big because they weren't addressing it. And I don't know, I guess to me it just seems like it's like a complete lack of responsibility on each of these people that go along with it. And the people that are like okay with it, especially like celebrities who promote it, it's like, well, you're not helping anybody by doing that. You're just making their problems and their lives worse. And if you're not standing up for the truth, the people that are least able to defend themselves, like the kids now, they're the ones thrown into this stuff, and their whole lives are messed up forever. It's like, that is some big consequences, and people are like, oh, you're not accepting. It's like, well, I'm not accepting of stupidity. Like, this is just downright stupid stuff. It's like, stupid.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, I agree. I think you guys talked a little bit about it in the podcast with Braden, where I think when people lose all hope in life, it's a landslide. Everything just kind of falls apart from there. So if you have no like hope, your best way out of something is just, I think it's almost like you almost kind of buy into your own, like, you buy into the fact that there's no way out. And so you just like dig yourself deeper and deep instead of like trying to get out of the hole. You dig yourself deeper and deeper and deeper, because that's like the only way out is like, it seems like the only way out of the situation you're in is by digging deeper and deeper down, and kind of like doubling down on the pain that you feel or the things you might feel, instead of actually trying to like figure out, okay, what is the source of my problem. You just kind of double down on your incorrect outlook on life. And so I think that's what happens with a lot of these people. And I think that's why we've gotten to the point where we're at in society, is because we've doubled down on stupidity rather than trying to figure out what truth is. And if we took the time to figure out what truth is, I think we'd be a lot better off. But it's harder to find truth because, I mean, it's just like anything else that's worth doing in life. It requires effort, and it's natural for human beings to choose the path of least resistance. Yeah, from an evolutionary standpoint, that was always the path that meant that we were going to survive as a species. So I think that's kind of like our go-to or MO, and yeah, it's gotten us into a tough place because we aren't willing to face any sort of adversity. I mean, you see it in the especially the younger generations. I mean, millennials, Gen Z, our ability to handle anything adverse is like zero. We have no resilience. And I think that's just a result of the society we live in, the moral structure of our society, the degradation of that. So yeah, I don't know. All I can say is grab a bag of popcorn. I mean, that's my takeaway from this. Enjoy, watch society fall apart. Make sure you have a gun and some ammo, and just hang out. I mean, I don't have much more. I don't have many other solutions other than just, keep yourself and your family safe, and try to improve yourself. I'm not saying just give up, because that lends to the problem. But I think like too many people try to solve the bigger issue, which is like, okay, how can we fix society? And I think that's what our government does, or tries to do, is they're like, okay, how can we fix this like big problem? But at the end of the day, it's not for government to fix. It's not for a World Economic Forum to fix. It's not for the elites to fix. It takes every single person, kind of like you guys talked about in that podcast with Braden. It takes every person looking inward, looking, self-reflecting, and saying, "What can I do to be a better person? How can I improve upon myself? How can I face the adversities that are challenging in my life?" And then once you fix yourself, then you can start to look at your family. How can I lead my family better? How can I help my family members better? And then it becomes this contagious domino effect, so to speak. But isn't there what's the parable from the New Testament about the blind leading the blind, where Jesus says that you should remove the splinter from your own eye before is it before you help the other person, or something like that? I don't know word for word, but it's something along those lines, is it not?
Yeah, I think it's like remove the beam out of your own eye first before the splinter out of your neighbor's eye. I think is
That's
how it
it.
goes.
That's
Yeah,
it. Okay. Yep, that's
yeah,
it. Yeah. And I mean that holds a lot of truth, because I think if we don't look inward and we just try to solve society's problems, and we ourselves are this completely broken, and we're all going to be broken. I mean, there's no way to completely fix ourselves. I mean, we're human. We're going to have problems. But we can't just look at the rest of society and say, this is what's wrong, this is what's wrong, this is what's wrong, while ignoring all the problems that we have. You have to address those problems. So I think that's when people say, okay, what is the solution to all these things that are going on in society? The solution is work on yourself, and that kind of contagion will spread as you start to improve on yourself.
Yeah, for sure. I think you hit the nail on the head with that one, Aiden and I've been reflecting a lot on this past week, just about the ideas that have been floating around recently. Um, it seems like the main ones are like, is it? Well, maybe I'll restart this thought. Have you guys ever heard of or read Atlas Shrugged? Have you heard of that book?
I don't think so.
It's one of the trio with Animal Farm 1984. It was like, this is the third one, I think. But it's really good. I've probably made like a fifth of the way through the book. It's pretty big. Pretty big book. If America was slowly becoming communist, like what it would look like. And the thing is, like, everyone is trying to find a free pass to getting the benefits of a good society, primarily through capitalism, but they don't want to call it that, and they don't want to be greedy capitalists. So they try to say it's for the public good, and then they take away the resources from the few people who are actually running a good business and try to melt it in everywhere else. So they like take down each of the big guys that are helping make industry happen in America, and these guys are having it harder and harder because they'll take away like a way to transport goods, and then they'll take away the right to transport goods, and then they'll divide the company. And so it's like the society is trying to corrupt them on all sides. And something that I found refreshing, I think we could talk about this with and women for sure, are coming out with like a hard take on that. Like, especially Jordan Peterson, I think he's really good at exposing how lies seem okay at the surface, but then they just crumble under the weight of truth. And I think it's like people are afraid to say it's okay to go for something good. I think there's like this top down, like the Matrix institutions. They're all trying to tell people like you can't be great because wanting to do something good for yourself is selfish. And if you do that, you're a bad person, you hurt other people. What you have to do is make sure that like you're just easygoing, everyone's getting along, you're not making really a movement towards something better, because that threatens other people's positions. So like the biggest fear a tyrant has is someone taking down him, taking his power down. And so he's so afraid that he actually locks himself in the bedroom alone and has guards around him to no one can endanger him. He essentially puts himself in a prison because he's so afraid of losing the power he thinks he has, because he thinks someone will rise up against him. I think that's what Andrew Tate is kind of saying, is like, look, it's not bad to want to have a good life, and it's good to want to be great at something and to want to push through struggle to achieve that greatness. And that isn't selfish, that's a good thing. So
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And that's a good segue to talk about Andrew Tate, um, and kind of what's going on with all that. I think you're totally right. I think the message Tate's trying to push, especially within young men, is that it's okay to like want to have like a good, like you're saying, a good life. There's nothing wrong with that, and it's been something that's been demonized by society. You shouldn't want to be this successful alpha male that's out there to make a lot of money and be successful and drive spend money on fancy cars and have a beautiful woman and all these things that are looked. I mean, in modern society, it's looked down upon. It's looked at as toxic masculinity to be a successful man, because somehow being a successful man is is dangerous to women and the rest of society, which is ridiculous. Because the only reason society has progressed the way it has in the last 200, especially in the last 200 years, is because of successful men. And there are the fair share of, brilliant women in that mix, but you have to have men. I mean, there's no situation um, where you can have a successful society without having successful, ambitious men. And I think that's the kind of the message that Andrew Tate is trying to push, is that it is okay to be ambitious and successful. And the Matrix, as he calls it, is trying to suppress that, because they know that's the key to, I think, the beauty of the individual, the independent man that goes out and makes his living and is free from the shackles of groups like the World Economic Forum and the big banks and big government and all these different things that try to hold the individual person in their place. And so I think that's the main message. There's a lot of stuff Andrew Tate says, obviously, but I think that's like the main message that he's trying to get across. It doesn't always come across in the most correct form, but I think that's at the core the message that he's trying to push, and I think that does have truth to it, um, because men should be leaders. You shouldn't, like, I think this idea that men need to be weakened so that women can flourish and so the rest of society can flourish is just absurd. I think that will only, and as we're seeing, it will only cause strife, because weak men are evil. They tend to act out in ways which manifest themselves in pure evil. Um, Whereas the strong man, the man that is confident, has the power to do bad. Like I think Jordan Peterson talks about. I think he says you should strive to be dangerous because weak men are inherently dangerous. But a man that knows the power that he like holds, um, but doesn't use it, that is like the true like dangerous man. Like that's like the definition of what it is to be a protector, to be a leader, to be a man. And I think that's something that's completely lost to society now. I don't know what you guys think, but in my opinion, at least, I think that this destruction of what it means to be a man is at the root of many of the problems we're facing in in our modern society.
Yeah, it's if you look at a lot of the people that are causing the biggest problems in the world, if you just look at their physique, they're really ugly. Like they're not good looking guys. It's not like they have good physiques, they have a good smile, they're usually bald or gray haired, ugly, fat, and just gross. It's like they're like leeches. It's like they just try to suck stuff out of people because they themselves can't do anything. It's like they're just along for the ride and trying to take down. It's like if you had a bowl and there's just a bunch of flies and stuff trying to attack the bowl all the time. The bowl's going to get upset. And because the flies, all they can do is just take on what's trash, and they keep swarming around. But they don't really have any power except to try to destroy something. Where the real man has the power to build a future. Reminds me of this book. I don't know if you guys have read it. It's called Wild at Heart, by what's his name? I forgot his name. But it's a story. It's pretty much a compilation of like understanding like what makes men drive, what gives them that motivation. And he was saying it's the call to adventure and finding struggle and attacking or trying to attack, like what Jordan Peterson would say, the dragons. And he said that's what gives them like the biggest joy, you could say. It's like if they slay the dragon, then they know they won the battle. But all these weak men are like the dragons. They're the ones that are just trying to literally sleep on people's gold and like try to steal it away. And if you try to take it back from them, they'll try to blow fire in your face of like saying you're a bad person or you take advantage of people or you're selfish. You shouldn't want to have your gold back. You shouldn't want to have a life back. It's wrong. But if you look at the greatest movies, like Lord of the Rings, for example, it's them trying to take down the things that take the goodness out of life. Like if you watch any movie that's good, there's always that conflict. And I listened to this really interesting talk. It was with Eric Thomas, called the Hip Hop Preacher. And he was saying that the only reason people watch football is because of the defense. If you didn't have a defense, there would be nothing to watch because the offense would just be winning all the time. He said it's in that conflict that those real stories and the hard obstacle or hard enemy to fight, you have to really use your mind and your skills to overcome that thing. And I think that's like an example of why World War II was considered like the breeding grounds for the world's greatest generation, because there was so much those people had to go through to win. And they did win, and then they brought that home. And I think if people try to dismantle the men, then they know they've won. That's why Andrew Tate is like, he said, if I could get a group of 100,000 women, he said, people are gonna be like, cool. If I can get a group of 100,000 really strong men, people are scared. because he said those men are going to have the ability to organize and fight as an army. He says women aren't really built to fight as an army. They're made to like the home life, and the men are supposed to defend and slay the dragon so the dragon doesn't destroy them.
Yeah, I think men from the very genetic makeup are meant to be protectors, defenders, and providers, and that's always been the case. Um, so this idea that all of a sudden even our genetic makeup is incorrect is outlandish. Um, but yeah, I think there's it's interesting you brought up that point that Andrew Tate made about getting like like a bunch of women together and people will be like, yeah, whatever, and then you get a bunch of men together and people are like, oh, that's some like that's like a formidable force. And and it just makes me laugh a little bit, and because if you get let's just say you get not even 1,000, not even 100,000, say you get 10 women together. What are women good at? Like genuinely good at, and it's causing drama. And so you get 100,000 women together, they're going to be fighting each other before the day's over. You get 100,000 men together, and they can all come together for a unified purpose. And while this is funny, I think it points to something very unique about men, and that is every man innately has this desire to unify under the common goal of protecting and defending. I think no matter who you are, where you are, I think you can unify with people that are like-minded to protect and defend something that you believe in as a man. And that's something that's innately like woven into the fabric of what it is to be a man. And that's something that's being actively attacked as we speak. And they're trying to remove that because they know if they can remove the defenders of our society, the defenders of the moral structures that we hold near and dear, that there would be nothing left to stop them. And when I say them, I'm talking about the elites, the matrix, whatever you want to call it. And so I think there's this realization that they have that men are the last. They're the last standing defense against society. And if they can completely destroy manhood, then there's nothing left there to stop them. And so I think it's a fascinating thing to think about because if you look at history and you look back at history, I think it's important to look back at history because history teaches us lessons, and there's a lot to learn from history. But if you look back at history, the reason all these great wars were fought, all these massive conflicts, World War One, World War Two, go back. I mean, the holy wars, all these things, they were fought by men that came together because they believed in protecting and defending something, and they were able to come together to and unite over a common goal. And so the amazing thing I think is that we still have that opportunity. There's a lot of evil in the world out there, but I think men are the last line of defense in protecting our moral structures. So we need to step up. We need to be better about it, and we can't let the complete degradation of manhood happen, because if that happens, then society will fall.
Yeah, it's like I'm trying to think of what you said was really good, Aiden, right? I'm thinking about that a lot. It's like Never thought of it that way, like men uniting around a goal. That's so true, and it reminds me of this talk. Like Jordan Peterson should be like our main guy. We need to be like his biggest fans or something. I feel like we quote him every podcast. But he was saying that if you look at guys in work, especially manual labor, he said that very simple, or look, seemingly looking simple things on the outside are actually pretty complex. Like having a good plumber, for instance. He said if you have a good plumber, you know your problems can be fixed. If you don't, then you have a big problem. It's like it's whether did he do it or not, but in order to do it well, you have to be a very skilled person. Like you have to understand how things work in physics. You have to understand human communication. You have to understand bidding, prospecting, all these different things that enable you to fix problems or to build something. And he said that men have this ability to find really sophisticated humor inside their work, especially like during manual jobs. Like they can elevate something that just seems terrible and they can make it fun and exciting. And he said that's an extremely valuable skill, something that's not really shared necessarily with like, I don't know, probably like a broad range of just like people that are more self-centered. Like if you have a job that's kind of nasty and no it needs to be done, there's like something elevating about a man able to look at it and say, yeah, I got this. Like, don't worry, we get this problem fixed and it's going to be okay. And there's like that resoluteness, that kind of like stake in the ground mentality, like, yo, I'm not moving, you better move because I'm not moving. Like, that's what makes like the warriors that make stories like Lone Survivor or Saving Private Ryan or Hacksaw Ridge, just those guys that had like this immovable force inside of them that made everything else move. It's like, you better get out of the way because I'm coming in. Like, and there's something so safe and secure around that feeling. Like if you don't have that, I don't think women can actually feel at peace in a relationship with a guy. At least from my experience. I know I didn't really have that when I was in my relationship. And it was like, if you're competent and you're able to take on problems as they come and fix them well, then there's like this peace that you can give to your girlfriend or your wife. It's like, hey, I got this, you don't have to worry. And then they're like, okay, I can just be myself again and focus on other things. But if they have to step up to the man's plate and say, okay, I gotta fix this because he doesn't know what to do, then they have to take on both roles. And then the guy's like, well, maybe I'll just hang out and chillax. It's like, well, there's more to life than just that. There's some really cool problems you can take on, and if you take those problems on, you
Yeah, I agree. I think that like men are supposed to be problem solvers, and this is just my view, and this might be taken in a very Andrew Tate way, but I think women are there to cause our problems, and we're there to fix them. Or if they aren't there to cause our problems, they're there to identify our problems, and we're there to fix them. And so, they might not be the ones actively causing the problems, but they're definitely there to be to be like the fire alarm, so to speak, when there's an issue. And yeah, but I think it is very like, I think most men are like this. I think most men are problem solvers, and that's kind of built into us. We want to solve problems, and when we see a problem, we want to fix it. And a lot of times that's to our detriment because we're constantly like, I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this, but like a girl comes to you with a problem, and she just wants to talk about it, right? But it's never just, with a guy, you can never just talk about a problem and not expect the guy to like completely like sit there like thinking in his head, doing the calculations, okay, how to fix this. And she's talking about like a problem with her friend, and she's blah 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 blah. And then the first like my initial response to that is like, okay, here's the solution to that problem. And that's not what women always want to hear. They sometimes they just want you to like be the ears there, right? But I think that's like something that's innately built into us. Like the first reaction is for us to come up instantly, problem solved. Like this is what you need to do to fix that problem. And if you aren't wired like that, maybe I'm sure there's some people out there that aren't wired like that. But I think most men are wired like that. I think there's something innate in us that wants to be able to fix a problem if we see it.
Yeah, it's just like an extra gear that you go into almost instinctually. But yeah, and it is the opposite with women. The way they solve problems is they talk about it. That's how they think and articulate it to themselves. So yeah, like if a man jumps in with his solution, then it seems like he's just throwing off her train of thought, which is why I think yeah, I think sometimes that can cause issues. So it's all a balancing act, like knowing when to apply your instincts. But yeah, no, that's an interesting point for sure.
Jake, do you know what they call that extra gear?
What do they call it?
They call it panic mode.
Yeah, fight or flight. Right?
Yeah, every guy knows that moment when they're like when the girl comes up to them and like starts like venting about some problem, and you just are like, no. Like,
because usually you can clearly see.
yeah,
You can clearly see the solution,
yeah,
but you got it.
you're like, I know exactly what to tell you right now, and it's it's like Becky thinks that so and so, thinks that Jenny is ugly. What do I do about it? And it's like, you don't do anything. You stop caring.
Yeah, you drop it, and
Yeah,
worry about yourself. That's the best
exactly.
thing you can
Yeah,
come up with. But
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. Hey, I mean, and that's when you just give up and you say, and then then you're like, all right, I gotta go meet my buddy at the cigar lounge, and I'll see you in 2 hours.
And a lot of times by then, like she'll figure it out herself just from talking about it. So you don't even always have to say anything. But yeah.
Yeah, I call it's called the listen and nod method,
Mm-hmm.
and it solves about 90% of women's issues. Believe it or not, they just need somebody to vent to.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, I totally get that. That's my favorite one to use. Oh, I totally get that.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
that easy. Guys overthink it.
Guys really do
It's
overthink it.
Yeah.
We're gonna maybe we'll start like a service. I think we'll start a service for men, and it's gonna be to help coach you through the problems you face on a daily basis with your female counterpart.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I like it.
I think it's some sort of counseling, because let me tell you, man, you go through enough of those conversations the week, and you do need some counseling. And
yeah. Even as the counselor, it could be therapeutic to bounce ideas off of each other, off of the people whom you are giving advice to.
I mean, I know I need some counseling probably. My counseling usually comes in the form of a 6-inch long wrapped piece of nicotine that's grown in a field in Cuba typically, but that's not always the best way to deal with things. Cigars are a wonderful way to relax, and if you're a true alpha, you smoke cigars. Andrew Tate says that, I think. But No, it is. It's very interesting to see how the masculine and the feminine are very like different, wired completely differently. Like I mean, in the way we think, in the way we act, and how we're built, physically, mentally, all of it. It's fascinating, and there's a reason there are two distinct genders, and there always have been. And this like convergence of genders is quite puzzling and scary. But I think a lot of it has to do with the degradation of what it means to be a man. Because if you take away what it means to be a man, then womanhood and manhood just kind of combine and turn into this one thing. And it's no surprise to me that if you take that away, that it leads to all these other issues of transgenderism and just a lot of people dog on the whole gender roles thing, but like there's a reason that for so long men and women have assumed different roles, and it's based around what we're good at. It's not demeaning in any way. Like I think that's a misconception. I don't think it's demeaning in any way. I think women do things that, like, women, for the most part, let's be honest, are way smarter than guys. Like, guys are really, like, simple-minded, like I said, problem solvers, but we can be dumb about a lot of things. Like, a lot of things. And women pick up where we kind of, tail off as far as our skills go. And I think that's the beauty. It's like the yin and the yang. I mean, it goes hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. But it's when you see the convergence of these things, and what happens a lot of times, I think, is when women start to take over male roles, that they start to lose the feminine side that society needs. And so then if you lose the feminine side, then you're missing a whole necessary set of functions that women provide and have provided. So weak men only lead to a weakened society, because then the female roles are then eventually shut down. And females naturally are better nurturers than males. And so if a female has to take over a male role, she's probably not going to be as good of a nurturer. And this isn't all cases. I know there are cases where there are exceptions. But a female probably won't be as good of a nurturer, as good of a mother to her children, if she doesn't have a strong male doing the things a male needs to do, which is protect and provide. She probably won't be as good of a nurturer. And what does that lead to? It's to problematic children. And it leads to a whole new generation of problems. So I think there's just these are things that just, they make sense when you look at them, and you take time to look at them with a little bit of common sense. But we've completely lost sight of that, I think.
I feel like that's a Tate speech, Aiden. You just did a Tate right there. What would Tate say? Aiden said it.
Uh-oh. The next thing you know, guys, I'm going to be arrested and held up in jail for sex trafficking charges. So watch out. If you see it, it's not true. The Matrix coming for me.
You're gonna come on the next podcast with a shaved head.
Dude, I'll do it. No, actually I won't. That's something I don't believe in. I don't think the shaved head has that. I mean, maybe it boosts your confidence, whatever. I like to think my glowing locks of blonde hair have some sort of confidence boosting aura to them.
What, isn't there some reason that he does it for, though?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know exactly what it is.
He's got some weird. He's got some things in there that make a lot of sense, and then he's got some stuff in there. I'm like,
yeah.
Do you really need to do that? Not sure. I don't know, but no, I'm a firm believer that that's why I took off the hat for this podcast. This is the first podcast I think I've appeared without a hat on.
Yeah, I think so.
And so now I'm just channeling my inner Tate, my inner confidence. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't know, guys. I mean, it's an interesting situation. Oh, yeah, yeah. Go ahead, Jake.
Oh no, you're good.
I was just gonna say, I think that we didn't really talk about a whole lot in the last podcast, but this situation is quite interesting to me, mostly because I've gone down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories. So I'm like, I've gone into the deep end with all sorts of conspiracy theories on this whole Tate thing. Um, but I think it is interesting. Like, okay, he could have just like if you watch some of his videos, he predicted this would happen. He said it would start with him being arrested for something, and then he would be held and detained, and then he would end up dead. Um, well, his first thing he said he would be canceled, and that happened. And he was like, I'm not upset because I've canceled. I've just expended one of my lives essentially. And then he's like, the next two like lives are, I'll end up being imprisoned. They'll come for me. They'll try to imprison me and they'll kill me. So I think that is interesting, and he could be complete. I mean, like this could be a complete setup. We don't know. I mean, we're sitting here in the United States. He's over there in where is he? Is it
Romania.
Romania? Yeah,
Bucharest.
Bucharest, something like that, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, like for all we know, this could be a huge setup. He could have the police in his pocket. We don't know that, but it is very interesting. But it does seem to be the MO for a lot of people that do get removed because of whatever standing on certain issues they have. Typically, they get canceled and then they might get arrested and then they just kind of disappear. So I don't think that's too far off. I know with this whole sex trafficking thing, I think those charges will get dropped eventually. I don't think he was sex trafficking. And that's just my personal opinion. Yeah. Sorry.
Do they, from what I heard, because I know he's claimed that it wasn't sex trafficking. He says it was money laundering that he's being held for. I don't know if that's been proven otherwise or not, but
well, I know he said he moved to Romania to like basically be able to
be a pimp.
Yeah, in a sense to be a pimp, but also to like avoid like taxes and stuff like that. So
Okay,
I think the money laundering thing is a possibility.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. And I know he was there already because that's where his casinos are. I don't know if that was because I don't know which one of those came first. If he was there because of casinos or if he was there already and then
he deals in what I like to call the gray area of business, and it's not quite 100% legit, but at the same time, it's not illegal. And that's how I feel. And there is the possibility he's gone to the illegal side. But I do know that he started out his first like big moneymaker. Well, he got involved with the casinos. He got involved with like he like basically like he's talked about it on some podcasts. He knew some people that were in like the Romanian mob that ran the casinos, and he's like, well, I'll build this casino and we'll both make a profit and blah, 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 blah. So I know he makes money through the casinos. I also know one of his first business endeavors was setting up a cam girl service. So he does dabble in kind of that realm of iffy, so to speak, entertainment. Now, does that mean he's a sex trafficker? Then no, it doesn't. I mean, we just don't know at this point. So, some of those things are very questionable, I think. And that's where like you can't hop on board with everything he says. Because he does talk about a lot of crazy stuff. Like I remember listening to this one, clip from a podcast he did where he was talking about he's like, this guy came to me and asked like if he should get like married and have kids and like all this. And he was like, you should go to South America and find a beautiful woman and like have like several kids with her but not marry her, and then come back to the US and like pay your dues, pay your child support and all these things, and that way you're like not locked in. And so like there's definitely some like morally, like objectification of women that Andrew Tate participates in. Now I don't know, is he Muslim? Because I know he talks.
I know he says he converted
Okay.
some time ago to Islam.
Now I don't know
I
exactly what his beliefs are, but I think there
yeah.
are portions of Islam that do like they don't believe like necessarily in the what do they call that? The exclusivity of a man having a single wife. I know it depends on what you believe and what you practice within Islam. I know that women that have multiple partners are looked down upon, but men that have multiple partners aren't looked down upon. Kind of like in the Old Testament, you see like a lot of the figures having multiple wives. I mean, like you name the big ones, right? Abraham had a couple, but so I think like from that standpoint, from a morality standpoint, it's hard to get behind those things. But then I mean, obviously we've talked about with a lot of the stuff he said. I think he definitely says things that are, I think, good takeaways for men, especially when it comes to being like a strong male, a protector, a provider. I think that's important. So it's like a case you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater type thing. He's got the good and the bad, and I think for the most part he's got more good than bad. Um, there are those things you got to like sit there and question a little bit, um, and just pay
The
attention to.
the ironic thing though is that for the amount of hate that he gets online, most of it isn't for those reasons. It's the majority of vitriol is directed at him because of statements like the one you referenced earlier, about pitting 100,000 men against 100,000 women, and which one would you choose? I know a lot of people talk about also his story about the 2 cups of coffee that he has his girl make.
I still love that story. That's my favorite story that he's ever said.
Right.
The two cups of coffee. I just to give a little short anecdote, and then I'll let you get back to it, Jake. Um, I may or may not have told my girlfriend about the 2 cups of coffee thing, and this past weekend, and she kind of laughed about it, and then she's not a coffee drinker at all, and I just started drinking. I took a whole year off of caffeine, because I couldn't really do it. It was a problem. But then this year I started drinking coffee again, and so like right now I'm drinking Black Rifle coffee. Great stuff. Um, but then this weekend I I showed her how to make coffee with like the drip coffee thing, and she's like, "Why are you doing this?" And I was like, "Oh, so you can make 2 cups of coffee every day, and I can throw away one." And I got slapped a little bit for that comment because that that was like shortly after I explained the story of Andrew Tate. Maybe not the best timing, but it was pretty funny. But that is one of my favorites. Like that whole anecdote from him is just hilarious. It cracks me up every time, and it is. I mean, like, come on, like you don't need to do that, but he does get the point.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's clearly tongue in cheek the way he's saying it. I don't think even he takes that seriously. But like, if that's the reason that you dislike him, and not because of his moral shortcomings, like I think, I think it shows that your head is in the wrong place. And something I always say when I'm conversing with people on the subject, and he comes up, people say he's a misogynist, he's this, and that. I say, okay, so I assume you don't listen to any hip hop music. You don't support any athletes that have children with more than one woman. There's so many examples in pop culture of sexist statements, objectification of women and men that you can point to with celebrities, actors, actresses, athletes. So it's like, why is he singled out for statements that like could be compared to other much worse offenses, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's like, look at every, like you said, rap song. Um, I dare anyone that has anything bad to say about Andrew Tate's quote, toxic masculinity. I dare them to go listen to their favorite song on the radio. There's probably something in there, and if not, it's probably directed. It's probably toxic. Like there's also the ability that like if you're going to claim toxic masculinity, then you have to look at the opposite, and there's going to be toxic femininity. I mean, just look at some of the songs that have come out in the last year and been, celebrated. And what's that one song from Cardi B? Is it WAP? WAP?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a truly horrific song. If you haven't heard it, I don't recommend you go listen to it because I can never unhear that song, unfortunately, and I really wish I could. But it's just like if you believe that if you believe somebody's a bad like you can't, yeah, if that's your reasoning to throw somebody's word out the window, I think you might need to do a bit more self-reflection because I think in today's society what he's saying is benign. um yeah, but I think you definitely could make the point, and I think we'll link these in the show notes. You can listen to Ben Shapiro's take and Matt Walsh's take on Tate, and I think both of them have an adequate, a fairly, what I would say, an adequate take on Tate. As far as I think they both agree that some of the things, I think he's identified the issue in society that we have weak men that aren't willing to be protectors and defenders. But his anecdote to the issue is maybe not quite up to par, and he misses the mark, so to speak, um, for the reasons that we just kind of discussed. So I thought those were both interesting, both definitely worth listening to, because I think that it's a more honest take on Tate. Not saying that everything Tate says is perfect, but at the same time, identifying, where he falls short of the mark and all that stuff. Not completely being on the Tate train, and at the same time, So I think those are, if you're somebody that wants a pretty unbiased take on him and a pretty just like firm moral look overview of who Tate is and what he said and what he's done. I think it's those two are pretty fair evaluations of his character.
Who do you guys think are like, who's like your big role models for men? Like, they could be people you know, but also like public figures. Like, who do you look to when you think of like a strong man?
That's a good question. I think from a moral standpoint, and just like a philosophical standpoint on what it means to be a man, I look especially to Jordan Peterson, but I don't necessarily think, and this is the odd thing, I don't necessarily think of him as like a protector. I think that he embodies, kind of the intellectual properties of what I'm trying to emulate. But if I was going to look towards somebody, I think, and this is maybe just me, um, but one person I follow and I greatly admire and respect is John Lovell from Warrior Poet Society, because I think he embodies a lot of what it means to be a protector, defender, and provider, but also does acknowledge the um, spiritual aspects of what it means to be a man. So I really do like him. Um, he tends to err more on the side of the protecting and defending, just purely from his background, as I believe he was in the army, and his business is focused around um, firearms and carrying a firearm to protect and defend your family. But he also does have education on how you can be a better father, be a better husband, stuff like that. And he is. I don't believe he's Catholic. I believe he's some form of Christian. So he does. I mean, he does still. Faith is still a part of it. So that's somebody I look to as like I think a good example of like what it means to be a man. But there's not too many examples otherwise I can think of. Um, there's I think people that display bits and pieces of it, but as far as being like well rounded in all aspects of I think what it means to be a man, I think he's the one that I look to the most.
Yeah, I know growing up, playing sports, I always kind of admired Tim Tebow and his openness about his moral code and beliefs in the face of pretty intense pressure and unpopularity. A lot of the times I know he was pretty often ridiculed by members of the um, media and even his own teammates and opponents at times, I remember, for making open displays of his faith on the field and in public. So I guess that aspect of being, I guess, like the fortitude and um, bravery, I think, that it took to be that, yeah, that open about what your beliefs are and trying to propagate and spread that across the world was something I always admired about him. And I think, yeah, it speaks to his quality as a man and something that I always tried to look up to and emulate.
Those are all really good. I think I see definitely like all your points, just in my reflections of those characters, like John Lovell being the protector, Jordan Peterson being the mind, Tim Tebow standing for the morality and the faith. Um, I want to say the people that stand out to me. I think Trump is one for me for sure. Just like his ability to stand for what's right over and over again. Someone else that I think I get a lot of instruction and like example from for like being a provider is Grant Cardone. Like his whole mission is like showing people how to have a good life and maximizing their potential in each area. And then yeah, there's some like aspects of men that I see like I'd like to have that, but probably not their entire personality. Like I think Chris Hemsworth is a pretty cool guy. Like he's like a dad of I think 3 or 4 kids. He's smart. He's known for his physique, being extremely hardworking and stuff like that. Um, But I mean, it's like, yeah, it's like you almost have to take parts from each person that you respect and admire, and then try to make it comprehensive.
Yeah, I think that's totally the case. I think that you'll never find like one person that you can find everything in because none of us are perfect. So I think there's always going to be shortcomings to each of us. So no matter like how good maybe a person is at one thing, there's still going to be a shortcoming somewhere else that obviously is there. So I think it is like important not to become, because I think a lot of people fall into this trap, and I think maybe people did with Tate too, where you become completely like infatuated with the person rather than the beliefs they stand up for. And this is something that happens, I think, too in politics as well. Is you become completely infatuated with the person or the political party and then ignore the shortcomings. Um, so I think like yeah, you have to like recognize the good and the bad in each person and take away the lessons you can learn from them. The takeaways, what they're good at, but there's obviously going to be some things they're bad at as well, and that just comes with life and I mean and the brokenness of human beings. So um, I think that's just it's a reality.
Yeah, that's well said, Aiden. I like that idea of taking the beliefs away from just the person to understand what they're actually choosing to promote and then what they actually believe in. Because it is easy to get behind a character and think, oh, this person's awesome. And then you find out that it's kind of a facade. And like, then you feel let down. But if you're off the get go, like saying, no, this guy's good because he has these beliefs and he's articulating them well. He does these things well in his life, these things he doesn't. Then, in a way, you're, I think, almost more compassionate towards them. Because then you're like, instead of viewing them as like trying to be a perfect person, like they're human, but you gained a lot of wisdom from the good things they did, saw what wasn't great, and then be able to make a good judgment off of that.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think yeah, I think it's easy to make somebody like a an idol, um, and to shy away from that as much as possible is I think important because there's never going to be a perfect person to make your idol other than Jesus himself. So to make these false idols, whether it's a thing or a person, is dangerous. So, but it doesn't mean then that you can't look at somebody and take away something important or good from that person. You just have to be cognizant of not be yeah, like entering that infatuation to the point where it's blinding to other things.
Yeah, it's kind of like buying a car. You have to understand that not every car is going to be the best. There's pluses and minuses for sure. And hopefully you get a car with more pluses and minuses. But yeah, I feel like I got a lot of good things to think about from today. I I asked this question on Sunday. Um, I was trying to think of like how do you prepare to be more ready? I would say. I don't know if you're ever ready fully. Like taking on the responsibility of a family. And the question I said was like, what do I things? What does Tommy T got that someone would like to be dependent upon? Like is that something that would be reliable, or do I need to implement, I think I do for sure, new habits that will make sure that I'm more dependable and reliable and more ready for the role of being a father or a husband, a caretaker in all those ways. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Like, what kind of questions do you ask yourselves to bring out? How do I be a good man in the eyes of God and my family, friends, all the people that we're related to in some way or another?
Well, I guess like the first thing, just like you just said, is recognizing that there are plenty of habits that we all need to implement in order to progress in virtue and becoming better men. So I think that's a great first step, and one that I always try to keep in mind is that there's always more to go, more you can improve upon, and to never just be satisfied with where you're at.
Yeah, I think the beauty of life is that there's always something to improve upon. And so as long as as long as you're checking the basic boxes, right? To get started. Obviously, as you continue, you're going to want to continue to be self-reflective and look and say, "Hey, this is something I'm really good at, but I fail here, and this is something I need to get better at." But I think you need to look inward. If you're just getting started and want a practical way at looking at this and saying, "Okay, what do I need to have? What are the skill sets? What are kind of the what is the base for what I need to have to be an adequate protector, provider, um, for my future family?" And so you just need to look at the very basics. Okay, um, who am I right now, or what are my attributes that make me a good protector? What are my attributes that make me a good provider? Um, or where do I fail as a protector and provider for myself? Or if somebody was coming and interviewing me and saying, what makes you qualified for this job, if you want to look at it that way. So what makes you qualified to be a protector and a provider? And if you can't ask yourself, if you can't answer for yourself those two things, then that's where you start. I think you need to it's an exercise in self-reflection, and it's sometimes a hard thing to do because it's not always easy to admit your faults or admit where you need to improve upon, because it's it's easy to want to be perfect, or just to say, I'm doing pretty good, I don't need to work on anything, I'm good here. But all of us, obviously, in every aspect of our lives, need something to work on. um, so just looking at it from that point of view, on if I was going to be asked tomorrow, um, what makes you qualified to be a protector, what makes you qualified to be a provider, where are the areas that I need to improve upon, and then start there. Because I think if you start to identify those two aspects of your life, you will improve greatly in many other aspects as well. Um, because those two are like the biggest building blocks. Whether it's whether it's in self discipline, self improvement, all of these things that we talked about in some of the previous episodes, those two things can be summed up in the protector provider portions of what it means to be a man. So if you can identify those things, I think that's where I think most men need to start. They need to look at and be self-reflective and say, this is where I fall short. And that's the first step, identifying where you fall short.
Yeah, definitely. I like how you set the parameters of protector and provider, and then that's like your starting ground to build something great. And I like what you said too, like how there is something beautiful about always having something to improve on. I think that reflects a bit of what God tells us, and that He made us in His image and likeness. And so to be a friend of God means you can become someone so great and so good. And there's no real cap on it. As long as you keep cooperating with God's grace, there's virtually a limitless ascent towards Him. And, if you don't follow that path, then you can see what happens. Like, it's just kind of like all the worst things. But yeah, if you are at least, I feel like I'm speaking to myself, you're at least coming in every day saying, no, I want to do a good job today, whatever I'm doing, and hopefully I can share that to help somebody else. I want to say that's the right path and the right road towards manhood. It's like the man maybe isn't the best when he starts off the journey, but by the time he gets to his destination, he's probably encountered so many obstacles and roadblocks and setbacks, problems, that he's like, okay, I think I have a better understanding of how I can get there. And when I get there, I will know that I took on all those other obstacles in my life up till then. So in a way, I feel like I'm more ready to accept that final reward. Actually, that actually might actually make a lot of sense. We were talking about ambition in the beginning, like it's wrong to think in the society that they think that ambition is a degenerative thing. But if you actually work towards something really good, you should be rewarded for that, because that's an acknowledgement of the good you did towards that good. So the only way you can actually receive it is if you'd actually been deserving of that good by the way you were beforehand. So if you try to say ambition is bad, then you're kind of saying that you shouldn't be good for goodness sake. You should just be good for what's expedient. But if you're actually like, no, I'm going to take this on because I understand the value of the end goal, then you will be deserving of that end goal because you took the steps to reach that.
Exactly. I think you figured it out, Tom. I think you solved the age-old question here for us tonight.
At least a part of it.
There you go. At least a part of it. You still got more to work on.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that all of us. I think like if we look at this on a obviously we could look at this at a macro level, but if we look at this on a micro level, like just think about how greatly the world would change if each of us looked inward, self-identified our shortcomings, and tried to, even if we acknowledged them, how much greater the world would be. But not only that, but acknowledge and then try to improve upon those things. Imagine where we would be at as a society today. It would be incredible. So I think, with all this despair going on in the world, and I know I said earlier in the podcast, grab your bag of popcorn and sit back and just watch society unravel. That's all in good fun, but I think there is a sense of hope here. I think the solution to the problems that society is facing will not be solved by the World Economic Forum, will not be solved by the United States government, will not be solved by Bill Gates, will not be solved by Elon, you name it. they will be solved by the individual person recognizing their shortcomings and improving upon them. So that's why we're here, to recognize our shortcomings and start to improve upon those. So I think that's a good way to end our podcast. I think this is a great discussion. I think we've gotten maybe close to the truth, and maybe we've just rambled for the last hour and a half. I don't know. But hey, rambling about things that, may seemingly be important is probably better than doing nothing. It's probably better than watching Netflix, right, guys?
Yeah, for sure. It's a lot more fun.
It is a lot more fun. Yeah, it's exciting. So, yeah, I think there is hope. If I was going to end this podcast in any way, I think there is hope.
Yeah, as long as we're still in the game, there's always a chance we're gonna win.
So you're saying there's a chance. Yeah, I think it's a good way to close out our podcast for the night. What do you guys think?
I think we said a lot of good things tonight, and at least I have a lot to think about for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be sitting contemplating for the next week, and then I'll have to try to think of well actually, guys, we should just, for those of you who are listening, if you have an idea of what you want to hear from us next, we've got some ideas in the works, but what do you guys want to hear? Leave it in the comment section below. We'd love to hear your input. We've been getting more, we started posting these Instagram Reels and these YouTube Shorts, and people have been watching. So I know there's people, we will turn this into a short and we will post it. So I need you to leave it in the comments below. Leave in the comments below what you want to see from us. I want to know. Do you want to learn about presidents? Do you want to hear me ramble about my crazy conspiracy theories on how there's a gold mine in ancient Egyptian tombs in the Grand Canyon? I'll talk about it. I'm ready. I'm fine. I'm ready to do a 12-week series on my insane conspiracy theories. It's a passion of mine. It's my 2023 passion. Is conspiracy theories. I can go on and on. So yeah, leave in the comments below what you want to hear from us. Whether it's about presidents, whether it's about history, you name it. We will start planning our year. So starting probably next week, you will get an idea of what the next year podcast looks like. At least the next month or so. We'll try to plan it out a month, so you guys know what's coming and you know what to expect and you know what to look forward to. So I'm excited about that. So comment below, subscribe, do all the things. Follow us we've got Twitter. We're going to be on Rumble. We're on YouTube. If you're listening to us on Spotify, we're on YouTube. And if you're listening to us on YouTube, we're on Spotify. All the links are below. All the links are in our link tree that I have so amazingly put together. My technological skills are improving immensely. I feel like a new man. It's a new year. I'm a new man. But yeah, guys, any last thoughts for the podcast before I close this out for tonight?
I think we're good. I think you said it.
All right. Jake?
Yeah, I think we covered everything. I would just say be a man.
Yeah, be a man. Ask your woman to make you 2 cups of coffee. With that, we'll close up the podcast for the evening. This week, be safe, be smart, be vigilant. Look for ways you can constantly improve to be a better person, to be a better husband, to be a better boyfriend, to be a better neighbor. It doesn't matter. Look for ways you can become a better version of yourself. There's constant room for improvement, and I know that you guys can find a way to improve yourself this week, even if it's just a little. Constant improvement is better than no improvement at all. So be safe, be vigilant. Most importantly, be a good American. Thank you.